Hi everyone and welcome to Service for the Community. I'm your host Matt Blow and today we're kind of doing a special edition with Sam and Bob from Preservation Clarkston. Hi guys, how's it going today?
Great, how you doing?
Good, doing real well. Nice.
Good. So we're going to start off with kind of the big question of how does Independence Township kind of benefit from Preservation Clarkston? Like why is that kind of a necessity in a community like this?
Well, I think the main reason is it's something that we've been lacking in the past. The township has always promoted the need for a community group to kind of protect it and keep it a bedroom community. And that's one of the reasons why we went with the Preservation Clarkston name, and we're trying to save all the landmarks and basically keep it a bedroom community and the charm of Clarkston, and a lot of that comes from the historical buildings and barns and roadways, and that's some of our main focus is that.
So preserving different areas of the Independence. Well, I think you mentioned before the show that you kind of use the Clarkston Community Schools kind of as your boundary, and so you kind of look to preserve different buildings and things of that kind of service area.
Yep, that's kind of our target area, but we expand even past that. We're doing working with a project in Waterford with one of their historical barns, and but our main focus is the Independence Township school district boundary. So that covers Springfield Township, Davisburg, a little more outreaching into the rural areas. So we weren't limited just to Independence Township or the village of Clarkston.
Sure. Now, one kind of unique thing, and I think, Bob, you're going to kind of tell us about this a little bit, is how the Clarkston High School is involved in your guys' group.
Well, yes, through the foresight of the Clarkston schools, they have the construction tech program. Steve Wyckoff and Jeff Pearso are doing that. And through that connection, the kids are able to come to some of the sites and actually have some hands-on experience. We have used them to go through safety training on harness training for roofs, so they've done some roofing out there at the Bailey home. They have done some drywall out there at the Bailey home as well. And that whole program kind of puts back into their backgrounds the ability to do these things, and kind of when they're in there driving around their community, they can see and maybe say to themselves later on that, hey, I helped restore that building. I learned how to do that. Now I'm a contributor to society by adding those talents and skills to their background.
Well, I'm sure there's probably cases of students that go on to some kind of construction or other kind of field like that based upon the knowledge they got to receive while they were in high school.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's where that tie-in is so critical and so important to that future ongoing generations to learn those skills and trades. Absolutely.
I think a lot of high schoolers don't always realize, like, you're probably not done learning at the end of high school. Now, whether that's going into the armed services, whether that's going to college, whether it's an internship or some kind of apprenticeship, whatever it is, you know, you're probably going to need to learn some additional skills, and it's great if you can find your interest in high school and then kind of find a way to make that, you know, the thing you do for a living, that thing hopefully you love to do.
Yeah, that might actually be the start of learning at the end of high school, where you can find out where you're going.
Right.
Well, and I think to add to that, like you can go to college right now for construction management, but that's primarily commercial. So the only college classes I've ever seen were for commercial construction management, where the liability in commercial falls on the architect and engineer. And in residential, it falls on the builder. So any person can build a commercial building without a builder's license. There's no such thing, as long as you follow the plan.
Right.
In residential, the plan's not sealed and stamped. The builder has to know how to do it all. So with working with Steve and Jeff, what we talked about is that since 90% of all the construction in the country is renovation and remodel, not new construction, because everyone has to maintain all the existing homes, that if we can teach the kids historical restoration, which is the most complicated, and in that they'll get the remodel experience they need, that then new construction is you know, so easy compared to that, because you have a plan to follow, where the other one you have to react to the existing conditions, the complexities, more you're correcting, not starting from scratch building new. So what's always been missing in their program was the remodel aspect. Same thing, schools are teaching all new construction. Well, there's not that as much new construction as remodel. So the program with the school district in Clarkston is really cutting edge. I mean, these kids what we've done with the Bailey House is we're going to give them a 3-year, it's a 4-year program. The first year the kids learn safety and tools and all that. they're going to be able to do the whole entire house from the stone foundation to the roof 100% through their, through the school. So our intent is to have programs like that continually happening, and then we're going to have, they're already working on the Presbyterian Church on Mabee Road. They've worked on the family garden at the old Bayless farm over there, working on that. So they also have a new construction building they're building at the high school, so that's a whole separate entity. And then what Preservation Clarkson's been able to do is bring to them, or help bring to them, we're not the only ones, but to bring the preservation work. And with deteriorating membership and social groups and civic groups and preservation, I think that's like Bob said, I mean, if you can drive by and say, I saved that house, I saved that house, that just ties everybody back, and that's what's missing is
that connection.
Is the community volunteer thing, and we can bring a whole nother generation into it. And in the interim, hopefully do internships over the summer and then place the committed students as soon as they get out with the guys that they've been working with us for years in the field, and they can get out and make enough of a living at the current rates coming out of college, where they can start at $40,000 a year in the construction industry right out of high school at 18 years old. So it's a pretty big opportunity, and Clarkson Schools is way above all the other districts to do that. And there's a lot of construction jobs that pay a lot better than any job that you'll get with a college education. So it's not low paying. Right. It's not low paying jobs in the construction industry anymore. That's all caught up now.
Could you guys kind of briefly give kind of our audience maybe some kind of example of when you're dealing with like a historical house, what are some difficulties or just obstacles that you have to kind of be mindful of when you're kind of remodeling or constructing that you wouldn't need to deal with if you were building like a brand new house that didn't have to maintain any kind of historical standards?
Well, I would say the first two things are going to be the top safety issues. So you're talking lead paint and asbestos. So that's the big safety to deal with those. I know that talking to Steve, that they've got kids already lined up to go through lead abatement training, which any house built before 1978, you should assume, has lead paint, which is a lot of homes, so that's critical. The asbestos is critical, knowing how to identify it and have it tested. We're doing a project on Main Street right now where we had 13 different things tested for it, from the adhesive for vinyl flooring used to have it, all the way up to the steam pipe wrap. So there's stuff to know about that. And then where you wouldn't get the exposure is like beam construction homes, which a lot of them are in the township, and different, stone, clay packed stone, staggered foundations. Those types of things are things that you may come across in a house because the original structure was built at the turn of the century, but it's been remodeled. There's homes in the township you wouldn't think are 100 years old because they've been remodeled, but once you get into them, you're like, oh wow, this is post and beam construction, this is this little part of the basement stone, and all of that's very valuable to know, and there's no program to learn that. So that's what makes this program so special, is that they're going to be exposed to things that have taken me 25 years in historical, as a business and as a living. I've done historical restoration since the early 90s, and it takes a long time and a lot of houses through a lot of time periods to be exposed to those types of things, and they're just going to be getting them as part of their regular curriculum.
And I would add maybe just the idea or the concept of the safety of the items. If I break a window in a new home, I can go to Pella and get a new window. Some of the historical windows and the framing and the woodworking and the flooring, you're just not going to be able to go to your local construction company or big box store and buy those type of an item. So being aware of what you're actually dealing with when you're when doing the remodeling is one I would think is very important as well.
Sure. Now, you guys aren't the only kind of historical group of some sorts, but you guys do have a different mission and a different purpose. Could you guys kind of explain how Preservation Clarkson is different from like the Historical Society and some of those other groups that exist?
I'll let you do that one.
Okay. Well, just on the short, the Clarkson Historical Society over at the library, they're they're basically an education, you know, they focus a lot on education, a lot on artifacts, a lot of history, a lot of genealogy. They're not out in the field, you know. And then you've got the Clarkston Historical Commission, which regulates only the historical homes in the designated district in the village. So not even all the homes in the village are regulated by them. They're like a homeowners association for historical homes to make sure that they keep the integrity of the village historical district intact. So we're the blanket that goes over it. We go out in the field. You know, we want to save the landmarks. It's all about the character of the community, like the master plan and Independence says, that we've recognized as a community that the character has a monetary value. The reason people live here, the diversity of housing in the township, canopy covered dirt roads, barns, stone walls, those are the things that make Clarkston a bedroom community that people want to live in. And that's kind of we're looking past that. So anything that could alter the character, all the way down to, we just at the Planning Commission at Independence Township voted again to not allow the expansion of LED signs in the township. Because the blinking and flashing lights of Independence Township, imagine that on all the roads around the village and through the township,
right.
waving, you know, flashing, blinking, everything. That's a character changer. And that's, you know, so all the way out to that, where we would think that's something that we should have input. And then with you got to be real careful with the way municipalities manage, because as the boards change, they're just transient employees, the people who make it. Some boards are very historical orientated. We've had some that did the inventory of the township historical homes back in the day with Joanne McCrary. And then sometimes you get a board where their focus is on development and new construction. So you have to be patient, and you have to be, we needed an entity that could bring that to the meetings and say, although you're not passionate about historical restoration, let's consider it.
Sure.
When the Bailey House was going to be demolished to put a sidewalk through, which seemed absurd hearing that the first time, they thought they had exhausted all their options because there was no resource to go to. And Preservation Clarkston has become the resource through the community and the county, and we've got them to change the way that they look at things, not to acquire property with historical structures without an exit strategy first. We've been on the Bailey project for 2 years now. We've got about another 6 months to go to acquire the property. But all of that could have been cut in half had somebody had the foresight to, when they bought that property with a land grant, carving out the Bailey house and buying the rest of the property with the land grant, so the house wouldn't have been controlled by the regulatory rules of the DNR who gave them the grant. So now they understand at the county, that's one thing we have already done, is say, hey, before you acquire any more property, if there's a building on there, why don't you, reach out to us or other groups in their areas, because there's Preservation Farmington, there's other, and get some, before you think you've exhausted all the means, get the residents involved. So.
And that was what was born from Preservation Clarkston, was born from that idea that there was no place to go to preserve the Bailey House or to do that. So.
They had thought they had exhausted all means necessary, and obviously they hadn't, but only because they didn't know where to go. Right. And we weren't notified that it was a problem, and then when it was almost too late. Everyone had already thought it was done, so we just kept stopping the wrecking ball, and it's very exhausting how hard you have to work to do something good.
That's true. That's true.
It takes a lot of time, and people don't want to put the time into it. So the bigger the group, the more people that can be allocated to the time you need to protect the.
And we put a lot of Band-Aids on that before we could get it to the point where we could seriously to stop the bleeding until we could exactly. So it was quite a lengthy endeavor.
Well, as we're kind of wrapping up here, do you guys have any upcoming events you might want to mention to our audience out there?
Tell them about our meeting.
Yes, we'd love to have anyone join us at 6:30 on the third Thursday of every month at Buck Shorts at White Lake and Andersonville Road. In fact, we have a meeting tonight, so we'd love to have anybody come out that would love to hear what we're all about and join us. And that's where we're going to meet.
Facebook too. I think that we have a you can go on Facebook to Preservation Clarkston
Right.
and get all of our information. Get on the email list, and Maggie or Jenny will get a hold of you. And
Would certainly love to
it's a
see
pretty
you.
casual thing. We meet.
Yeah.
We have some beverages. We order dinner. We have a little social time before the meeting. Then we do a little business, and then we visit. So we have so it's a pretty relaxed setting for
Right.
people who find this stuff interesting.
So we'll see you out there tonight, Matt?
Well, maybe. But we are talking about maybe working with you guys and figuring out some videos. So hopefully, people are going to stay tuned and see some more of the stuff you guys are doing here on Independence Television.
That'd be
That
great.
would
Well,
be
thanks
great.
a lot for letting us get the
Yes,
word out.
thank you so
Yeah,
very
no
much
problem.
for letting us be
Thanks
a
for
part of
stopping
this.
by, guys.
Appreciate it.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of Service for the Community. We'll see you guys next time.